I don't see any chats.
Should be good. Should be live.
All right, let us know if you're live. We see Megan, Vicky, Hector. We see Dallas, Texas checking in. Let us know where you're coming in from. And let us know some questions or comments you want us to talk through. We're still getting everything turned on. If you don't know me, I'm Chad with Canine Revolution Dog Training. This is Chris with Canine Revolution Dog Training. Both professional dog trainers. We got New Mexico rolling in. Thank you guys for being here. Texas. All right. Start sending your questions over so we can start handling those for you guys. Ben's in the background, setting up all of the equipment and everything, making sure we're smooth. Ecuador. Kwame's in here.
Hey, Kwame.
Kwame, what up, brother? So as we're getting this YouTube going, we're always also trying to get the Instagram on. So Ben, whenever you get a chance, go turn that on real quick. Megan, we got your question. What do you do when you're ignored by your dog? Just give us 1 second here. We're live on Instagram now. We're live on Instagram. We're live on YouTube. Good to see you guys. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your support. All right, so first question coming from Megan. If you're just getting into the live, please let us know where you're coming from, where you're watching from. Please send us your questions and comments. Same thing on Instagram. All right, hello from Pennsylvania. Good to go. We see you guys. All right, first of all, we're going with Megan. What do you do when you're ignored by your dog? Chris, what's your response to that one?
Yeah, so in short, you got to be more valuable, right? So what is your dog's ignoring you, checking out, maybe they're sniffing the ground, maybe they're distracted by something. You got to become more valuable than that. So my initial thoughts would be doing some food training, manipulating hunger drives potentially. So it's like instead of just giving them breakfast, maybe I'm going to make them work for breakfast. Maybe I'm going to play games with their food, let them chase me if they're into that kind of stuff. Try to get their focus on me. So paying attention to me is more valuable than whatever it is that they're doing where they're ignoring you, right? So if they're deliberately checking out to sniff the ground, right, they're more interested in that scent or that odor than you. So we got to do something to become more interesting than them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's some of my initial thoughts.
Yeah, one thing I like to do is always try to manipulate the hunger drive to the best of my ability. So if we're feeding the dog kibble, for example, for their mealtime food, when I'm doing my training sessions or my engagement sessions, I'm going to be using something that's better than kibble. So, cut up hot dogs. I've used cut up steak before. I've cooked like crock pot type food, used that before. So experiment with the food that you're using. Once we start getting that dog to want what we have, then we start increasing our criteria for the dog to access the food that we have, okay? And we are going to be using the food a lot at the beginning of this process because we just want to build up our dog's desire to want to pay attention to us and not ignore us. So try experimenting with some different types of food. Figure out what your dog really wants. As soon as you figure out what they want, maybe that's some cut up hot dog or steak, for example, and just get the cheapest steak you can. Don't go, filet mignon or anything. Just get some flank steak or something. As soon as you figure that out, now increase your criteria for your dog to be paying attention to you. We want them to be giving us eye contact. So if they're looking at your belly, they don't get the reward. If they look at your eyes, then they get the reward. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Let us know in the comments if that's making sense or not. That's my first thing I'd be doing. The other thing would be, heavily managing my dog. So I'll be keeping them on a leash outside, because if they're off leash, they might walk off, blow me off, sniff things. If I have them on a leash, they can only stay within about 6 feet of me. And so at a certain point, they'll get bored, and then they'll start wanting to pay attention to me. So, okay, Megan, you said that's a great idea. Try that out. Let us know. We'll try to keep that on tap for a video possibility as well, to make a video to try and show you that some more, okay? All right, next question comes from Vicky. She's got an 80-pound pit bull, sweet dog. He sits, settles, but when outside he won't come. He runs like a wild banshee. Chris, what are you handling on this one?
Yeah, sounds like you're doing some good work on getting some obedience in and whatnot. So I would just continue that train. Like what'd you do to get that sit? When you're given those commands, and we want to build the recall basically. So I think in this case, management's probably going to play a huge factor from me. So like if let's say when I let my dog outside, he's free roaming around, he's running around, he'd rather do other things and not, he's kind of blowing me off on the recall. You can do a lot of the stuff we just talked about, right, to build that recall, making yourself more valuable so that when you say come, that means something to your dog, right? So you're becoming more valuable, they're wanting to come. But in the initial phases of teaching this recall, you got to manage them, right? So you can't let them self-reinforce on all of these other options that they have outside when they're free roaming. So I'm gonna keep them on the leash. Leash is on. We're coming out, and I'm practicing my recalls on that leash. And so I'm gonna get very good at recalls on that leash. And as I'm still working on my sit, my down, my stay, right? Once I have a good solid stay, that's when I'll tend to push the distances more, where I might drop the leash down, take another step, then do my recall, right? And that can kind of be a gauge for you as you baby step this, how far you can go. Like I'm not going to just day one put him on one end of my backyard and go all the way to the other end and expect him to recall when he's got other options to do. So I want to make myself valuable, just like we talked about, but also manage him so he can't self-reinforce in the meantime.
Exactly. The only thing I would add on to that too is you could get some long lines. I don't know if you talked about that or not, but you got your standard 4 or 6 foot leash. You can use that to do what Chris is talking about. Once you master your recall, your come command within 6 feet. Ben, is my audio good? I'm being heard okay? Let me know if you guys can hear me good. But once you master that 6 foot distance of that come command, now it's time to increase it. So go to 15 feet, you can get a 15-foot leash. Go to 30 feet, you can go to a 30-foot leash, okay? So keep doing that. I will say Pack Talk Podcast, that's our podcast. We have an episode. Ben, if you get time, if you can pull up the episode for the recall. We have an episode where we specifically lay out what you would want to do from start to finish to get a solid recall from any dog. So I would definitely recommend checking out that podcast for details on how you would be doing that. Audio is good. Backing up one question back to Megan real quick from New Mexico. She had put in a kind of a secondary question. We had talked about, getting her dog to pay attention to her, not ignoring her. She asked a follow-up question, what if they pay attention to just the food? So if you're doing your engagement right, you're changing up your food that you're using. What if your dog is just paying attention to the food? You have to increase your criteria for the dog to access your food. Okay, remember the food that you're using is just for a period of training. After we get through our foundational phases of training, you'll start to be using less food. But we have to get our foundation set before we get rid of the food, okay? So, Megan, your question, what if they're paying attention to just the food? Then they don't get the food unless they're making eye contact with you. So one way that I do that, I've got my dog on a leash. I've got the food in my hand or maybe in a bait bag or something. If the dog is paying attention to the food, I put it back in the bait bag. I put it behind my back. The dog gets zero access to that food unless they decide to make eye contact with me. As soon as they make the eye contact, I say, good, now I give them the food. And you'll find pretty quickly that your dog understands that looking at you is what gives them access to the food, which is what we're looking for, okay? Backing it up real quick to Vicky, she asked what the podcast is called. Our podcast is Pack Talk Podcast. Ben's putting it on the screen. You'll find it on any podcast platform, but we have several episodes specifically for certain behaviors. So we have a recall, a come command podcast. We have a healing or a no leash pulling podcast episode. like a down stay command episodes. We have episodes that are specific to behaviors you're going to be teaching your dog, so that you can listen to that over and over and get the details on specifically step by step what to do. Okay, so always give us feedback, please, for anything we can add to that, or a podcast episode we can do. The good thing about the podcast is you can listen to it while you're driving, so that's one of the main reasons why we do it. Okay, all right, moving on to the next question. We have Hector, and Hector is coming from Dallas, Texas. All right, Hector says, my doodle likes to over sniff at the dog park to the point where some dogs have to correct him. He ignores my verbal leave it. I have an e-collar. Should I start stimming him? So I just have a follow-on question here, Hector, if you're still with us. Based on your question, I assume that your doodle is over sniffing other dogs. Is that what you're saying? That's my assumption. So Chris, what's your go-to for that one?
Yeah, I mean, in general, I don't like the dog park scenario. Like in that scenario, I don't know those other dogs. I don't know the owners and things like that. So just my personal preference, I'm going to avoid that situation altogether. But this can happen out on the street or whatever, that kind of stuff. So I would say, based on what you're saying, potentially your dog may not understand the leave it command. You know what I'm saying? So that might be something we're working on the side. Maybe there's other things in the house or whatever. Maybe pick something up. We're telling him to leave it. If he's conditioned to the remote collar, that's something that you can use in your communication system, where we say leave it. He doesn't leave it. We say nope. We give a little bit of stimulation on the collar. He leaves it. We say good, and then we can reward that. And so you got to teach him outside of the context of being overstimulated, that leave it command, to where if he's getting overbearing with a dog and we're wanting him to kind of back off a little bit or just leave that dog alone, now leave it, actually he's kind of understanding the context. Most likely in this situation he's is overstimulated, right? He's very aroused, and he's wanting to continue sniffing to the point it's making some dogs uncomfortable, and he's kind of like just blowing you off at this point, or just doesn't fully understand that leave it command. So I would work on that aspect outside of the dog park first.
Yeah, like based on this question, it seems like the dog just doesn't understand the command, like he said. He might not understand what to do if you did start stemming him with the remote collar either. So
right.
I would, take a couple steps back in your training, and I would refresh those, make sure that he understands that leave it command, make sure that he understands what to do when he gets the remote collar correction, which you can definitely do if it's taught properly. If your dog is over sniffing other dogs, you can definitely say no. You can definitely give them a correction on the remote collar, and they should stop what they're doing and just go about their business. If they're not doing that, that means I would step through and do a couple different, pull that up just a little bit, Ben. I'm trying to read this real quick.
Yes, sir. I can't see it.
Yeah, just pull it up like 2 inches or like 1 inch up.
Sorry, I lost it.
Right here. Yeah, right there. All right, so with the remote collar, with the let me just a little bit of technical difficulty here. There we go. All right, so with the remote collar, with the leave it command, I would go back. I would make sure that he understands how to perform those behaviors and what to do with those. If you don't know whether he knows or not, I would recommend you go to our Pack Talk podcast, episode 96. It's also, the video version's also on our YouTube channel, the Canine Revolution YouTube, and the Pack Talk podcast YouTube. And that video is called The Ultimate Dog Training Guide. You go to the Ultimate Dog Training Guide, especially on YouTube. It's got a PowerPoint inside the video where I'm basically taking you through every single step that we do training-wise, what you're looking for at those different steps in training, and what to look for before you progress to the next step of training. So if you go to that Ultimate Dog Training Guide and you make sure that you're checking all the boxes as you progress through your training, you should be good to go, and then you could use it to your advantage in the dog park or other scenarios that you're in with your dog. All right. Megan asked, what is stimming? Stimming is just some terminology used where if you give a dog a correction on the remote collar, if you have a remote collar or an e-collar, you put that on your dog. The dog has the collar. You have the remote. Okay. You hit the button on the remote. That is what a lot of people call stimming. When you push the button, it sends a signal to the collar to signal your dog That's what a lot of people are calling stimming, okay?
Stimulations.
Stimulation. Yeah, stimulation. So anyway, that's what that is. If you guys are not familiar with the remote collar at all, go to our podcast episode. I believe it's 75, somewhere around there. We will deep dive in there about all things remote collar, the history of the remote collar, the pros and cons of the remote collar, how it's being used improperly in a lot of dog training today, and how you could use it properly, okay? Which we were just talking to somebody earlier from the UK, and the UK is banning remote collars, e-collars. You cannot use them in the UK or it's incoming. So we'll have a discussion on some tips and tricks later if you're not able to have that remote collar availability, especially if you're somewhere like the UK. We got any questions off of Instagram feed? Okay. All right. We got next question, Jedediah's room. I have 2 untrained dogs, Odie 3 and Ammo 8 months. Ammo sees Odie as alpha. Should I train them separately? Chris, what do we got?
Yes. We want to train them both separate and together, but I think initially, so like I can speak a little bit to this. When I started training, I had 3 dogs and they were all untrained. So when I laid out a training goal, which you can like Chad said, refer to that podcast, and we'll talk you through that whole thing. But like here's my training goals. I laid that out. How do I get there? I used a lot of heavy management. So my focus in the beginning was training them individually, because it's if you don't have the expectations very clear with your dogs, it's hard to kind of juggle all 3 of them at the same time. They're going to be testing you. They just don't understand the expectations point blank. So yes, I went as intense to have 3 separate kennels. They're in the kennels. I take one out. I'm working with that dog on my training goals for the day. Put that dog up. Go to the next one. Same thing. And then once the expectations are in place, and when I say expectations, I mean like just my fundamental obedience, right? I have a sit, down, stay, come, command, and then the heel. Once that's in place, then I start working them together. So now I'm using a spot command or a place command in the house, and now I'm working them together. I'm doing healing with all 3 dogs at the same time. Even that, I started with just 2 and then added the 3, right? So like I baby stepped it up. But yes, in the beginning, it's always going to be beneficial to lay the groundwork, lay the expectations individually, and then start to kind of bring it all together.
Yeah, exactly. You want to train them individually and then bring them together at a certain point in training. If you start trying to train them together too soon, that's when you're going to have some difficulties. It could be competition difficulties. It could be, Odie's trying to dominate Ammo or whatever the scenario is going on. But you teach them their expectations individually. You get them solidified with you individually. Once that's done, then you bring them in together, okay? So that's how we handle that. And we do that all the time with a bunch of our clients and our personal dogs as well. All right. Let's see. Brian, South Carolina question. What language do canine police use when directing their 4-legged friends or directing their 4-legged officers? So they're going to use whatever language is that they're using at the time. Some people want to use German. Some people want to use English. Some people want to use, other languages, Spanish, whatever. The language doesn't matter. The verbal language doesn't matter. Your dog is not a verbal being. You are going to associate certain verbal words, certain verbal commands to your dog. Your dog will associate behavior to that word, but your dog does not speak German better than English. Your dog does not speak Spanish better than German. Okay? Your dog is just going to operate with the language that you're using with them and the language that you associate with them, all right? For me personally, it's just easier for me to use English because that's my primary language. That's my language. You know what I'm saying? But I can communicate with dogs without any verbal communication at all. And that's your dog's preferred method of communication, nonverbal. They are a nonverbal being. All right. Backing it up, we missed Kwame. Oh, he just took that message away. Kwame had a question about anxiety.
Separation anxiety.
You saw
so
that?
I think if I remember, dogs making noise when he leaves. The neighbor's reporting that the dog's making noise when they leave. Something to that effect. Right. And so I'm probably going to...
Here it is. How do you correct the whining from Kwame? How do you correct the whining when leaving the house? Neighborhood says Asher's very loud.
The neighborhood.
Right. Have not tried making Mr. leaving a big event. but still does it whenever he leaves.
And not trade making. Oh, making leaving a big event. So
Right,
he's not making a
right.
big deal. So like, yeah, that's a good step one. So
Right.
Kwame here, he's one of our alumni, so he's familiar with our protocols and stuff. So that'd be, if you guys are dealing with this, that's step one, is don't make a big thing about it, right? A lot of people, what do we do with our dogs? All right, buddy, I love you. I'm gonna miss you so much, and then boom, we're out the door.
Right.
Right. Or we make a big deal coming back as well.
Right.
Right. So he's already on that track. So some of the things, how do you correct it? Right. Bottom line, if you're not there, you can't correct it, but you can run scenarios, right? So I can set things up to where it is like I'm leaving, and maybe I'm leaving, and like and Kwame is Asher is conditioned to the remote collar and things like that, so you can correct at a distance with your particular case. So I might set a scenario up where I am leaving, and now I'm outside, right? So obviously, if the neighborhood can hear you, you're going to be able to hear them outside your front door and stuff, and then you can correct that behavior. If it's just whining, I think in general, as long as it, like I know you're saying the neighborhoods hear it, so if they're making complaints, that might be something that we got to get control of. But if not, and it's just whining, I probably will just have him in the kennel and let him kind of figure it out, and like, you know, let him calm down on his own. But if the whining is escalating into loud whining, barking, that kind of stuff to where you're getting complaints, then I might be running some scenarios to teach him to be quiet in the kennel. And I might do, and that's going to be in conjunction, not just with me leaving, but me being there as well. Like he may have separation anxiety when he's on spot and I walk into another room, right? So I might have to put him through those types of scenarios to learn to be away from me. So I might be doing a lot more healthy separation just in general life, not just when I leave.
Yeah, healthy separation is obviously key here. And, you know, like Chris said, don't do it when you need it, right? Don't try to work on this when you have to go to work or when you're leaving. Set up training throughout the day, deliberate training scenarios, just like anything else in life. Set up a training scenario to run through this drill, practice this drill before you have to go to work, before you have to leave. You can simulate leaving, right? Put him in your kennel like you're going to work, walk out the front door. If he's making noise, correct him for that, hold him accountable for that. Once he's quiet, then he can come out or whatever, you know. There are situations where you can get like a baby camera and, you know, set that up. You can get a cheap one on Amazon where you put the camera on him. You take the monitor outside with you. You go outside as soon as he's trying to make noise or get amped up or be anxious. You know, you can correct that, hold it accountable. Like Chris said too, you don't have to necessarily leave the house. If you can't put him in a spot, walk into your kitchen away from him or go to the bathroom or take a shower without him making a fit. You know, you got to work on that too. The same process, correct him if he's making noise, reward him if he's doing the right thing. Sometimes, this is not all the time, but sometimes this is so extreme to where you're going to need a little bit of help. And the way you're going to help yourself is by pre-exhausting him before you do the training session, right? So pre-exhaustion would be playing fetch, taking a nice long walk, you know, playing with a toy, whatever. You're doing some kind of physical exercise to wear him out so that he's, you know, in a more tired or worn out state. Then you go through the scenario where you're doing the healthy separation. And he should, you know, be less likely to get all amped up in separation type anxiety situations. So that can help in some cases, but you don't need to get used to doing that every single day. You might do that for a couple days out of the week, and then you should be good to go from there. But you have to be consistent with it, right? You can't do it one day and then the next day let him go crazy. You got to be consistent with your expectation. You know what I'm saying? All right, we got a feedback from Jedediah's room. Odie and Ammo, the two dogs, right? Odie is very reactive. Ammo has started doing it too. I can't even walk them when other people are on the sidewalk. I have to wait until nighttime, which is aggravating, right? What should I do? They make a child cry. I don't know if that's, you know, the owner crying or you know, a baby that's on the street. They're barking at it. It's the child on the streets crying. Either scenario, not good to go.
Yeah.
You know, what we got, Chris?
Yeah. So like we previously talked about, we're already separating them, right? We're going to be training them separately. So my priority is training expectations. That's it. So like, yes, our dogs need to be worked and exercised and things like that, but not at the cost of getting bad repetitions, right? So if my dog's super reactive and things like that, but I'm still in the training process of teaching them a heel position, teaching them to sit, to down, to stay, all that kind of stuff, my focus is probably not going to be long walks. I'm going to try to manage, or in this case, it might mean avoiding those types of situations for now while we're teaching those expectations. So I'm going to build a good heel position, showing my dog those expectations, teaching accountability through time. Again, check in with that dog training guide, that podcast that we did for step-by-step stuff. But my sessions are going to probably be limited to my living room, backyard, front yard, something like that. And so like my living room is going to be considered my baseline or like a low arousal type setting. Your backyard might be like the next step up if you've got like a classic fenced in backyard, not a lot of things going on, but there's still stimulators and things that can distract your dog. And then maybe my front yard is going to be the highest level of arousal for the phase that I'm in my training, because now I'm running the risk of a dog walking by or people walking by or things that are going to incite a reaction. So this gives me a good gauge as to where I need to do my sessions. If I can't even go into the driveway without my dog reacting at the neighbor dog across the street, I got some work to do in my living room and then maybe the backyard to getting control of the fundamentals before I go into my long walks. I tell my clients all the time, like, yes, our dog's got to walk, but you can walk a mile in your driveway. You can walk back and forth, right? A short distance. You can do this in your backyard. You're still working them, right? But I'm getting good repetitions, and that's going to outweigh the bad repetitions of when you have no control and your dog's just reacting. But hey, we got our walk in, so it's not really accomplishing much. So that's kind of what I'm thinking.
What if they live in an apartment complex?
Yeah.
Can you type that question in this chat? Are you able to do the whatever you're looking at on Instagram? Can you type it over here? What if they live in an apartment complex? Yeah,
that's tough. So like now, sometimes you got to do what you got to do, right? So then I am going to manage, like I said, I think you said you're walking them at nighttime and stuff. So I am gonna probably pick low traffic times to do my potty breaks, but I'm not going on like my dedicated exercise. Like, I got to get my hour of exercise in, so I'm taking them on the walk, when it's rush hour and everybody's getting home from work and stuff. Like I am still going to use an element of management and avoiding the issue while I'm working on the fundamentals, right? So I'm going to manage it as best as possible. I'm going to get him out as quickly as possible to do his business, pee, poop, and then hey, maybe we're coming back into my apartment to do some work. And then maybe my next step, because I don't have a backyard, would be the breezeway of my apartment. Right? I can always, like, if I see something that I'm like, I'm not confident we're going to overcome this, I can always duck into my apartment. I don't want to get stuck in the habit of avoiding things, right? We do want to be working through and overcome stuff, but in these initial phases, again, if I can't go from point A to point B in a good heel position, that's what I'm focused on, that more so than the reactivity, because that other stuff can be addressed once you've got clear expectations and communication with your dog.
Right. And just to kind of piggyback off that, whatever your dog is practicing is what it will continue to do. So if you're going out for your training session and your dog's highly reactive, or you're going for a walk and your dog's highly reactive, it's going to keep reacting on your walk. So you got to do what Chris is talking about. Make sure that you're at a distance from distractions to where you're able to build up your behaviors. And it's going to take time to build up behaviors. It's going to take repetitions to build them up. So you got to make sure you take the time to do that. But once you build them up, now at a certain point in your training, you're going to go back into distraction scenarios and proof your behaviors. Okay, and that Pack Talk podcast, episode 96, is going to be your go-to guide, your ultimate dog training guide from getting from where you're at to getting to where you want to be. All right, moving on here. Melissa Bush asks, any tips for nail trimming after multiple traumatic experiences? And that can be super difficult.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, that kind of goes along with like dogs having traumatic experiences at the vet. You know what I'm saying? So there's a couple of things. At the end of the day, Nick, nail trimming is something that needs to be done. Like that can be a potential health concern if we let it go undone. Right. So like there's a couple schools of thoughts that pop into my head. There's the element of like, hey, this is something it's just got to get done. We got to get this done. How do we make it as positive as possible? Then there's the more, what I would say, the long-term approach of desensitization.
Whoa,
careful.
Yeah.
Desensitizing the whatever the triggers that are causing the stress, right? It could be could be the trimmer itself, a grinder, nail clippers, just going to the groomers. You know what I'm saying? Going like that can be trauma in itself. And so like you've already got a pre-existing traumatic experience. A desensitization is going to be a much longer process. It could take you several months, if not longer, to really truly overcome that. And in that process, you may have to get the nails done. Right. And so like It just really depends on the dog. There's some cases where dogs are going to be very aggressive with you, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's other dogs that are just, maybe they're going to shake or be super anxious. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So it really just depends on the dog. In general, I'm going to do some type of desensitization where I'm introducing the thing, right? So let's say I'm going to use a Dremel, right? And let's say my dog's on a place command or a spot command and holding the downstay. I might introduce that Dremel, put it on a coffee table nearby, right? And holding the downstay, and I reward, right? Maybe I turn it on. Bzz, it's going off. We reward, right, as they're calm. If I see them get too stressed, we can back off to the next step. Maybe I need to turn it off and leave it there. But I can build that up to where maybe I'm touching the back end of it to their paws, or throughout, like every single day, I'm handling their paws, just touching their fingernails while me or somebody else is providing them with food, right? Making a positive association to all the things associated with trimming the nails, touching the paws, touching the fingernails, Dremel tool, clippers, all that kind of stuff. And then there's other times where it's like, we got to get it done. So I want to, in that case, set up the environment so that I can get it done as quickly as possible. But again, just depends on your dog.
Well, also, in addition to what Chris said, I would first make sure your relationship with your dog, because it's your dog we're talking about.
Yeah, bingo.
I believe, right? We're not talking about where you just happen to be a groomer and you're just grooming this one dog. You hardly see it other than when you're grooming. If it's your dog, your relationship with your dog needs to be your ultimate priority, because that's what's going to work you through all of these different situations. So ways you're going to work on that: number one, you're going to get your engagement work solidified to where your dog wants to pay attention to you no matter where you're at. Two, you're going to teach your dog to walk on a loose leash next to you. The walk is the bonding process. Once you get those two things done, you deep dive in on what Chris just said, then you'll be good to go. It's just going to take time. It's going to take repetitions. Quick question from Instagram. Should I go back to being strict around the house with my trained dog when bringing home a new untrained dog? And the answer to that is going to be, your trained dog has been in your house. It knows your expectations. So in general, I'm going to let my trained dog kind of do its thing. I'm going to be using my spot to my advantage, have my dog go back to their spot. If my trained dog starts causing problems with my untrained dog, then I can be a little bit more strict. With my new untrained dog, my focus is to train that dog to the level of my trained one. So that new untrained dog is going to have some more strict protocols, some more strict structure, and then they're going to build up to the point where my trained dog is, and they have the privileges that that trained dog has. So I hope that makes sense, Instagram family. Thanks for the question. Let us know your feedback on that answer. All right, hopping back over to YouTube questions. So that is the nail trimming question. Jumping over here, Kwame gives some feedback. He lives in a condo. Asher spots on the balcony. When people drive up or walk away, Asher starts to growl. Hackles go up on his back. Is it okay to correct the behavior with the remote? He's also saying he never barks, just growling. Same thing when people come up the stairs. Is it okay to correct him?
Yeah, it is okay to correct them, and it also depends on your goals. You know what I'm saying? So if there's self-defense side of things that you want, like, hey, Jaretta's hanging out at the house by herself, some shady guy comes up to your apartment, do we want him to potentially growl or bark? You know what I'm saying? I think more importantly, we want to have control of the growling and barking. He's holding downstay, he's in his spot. We should be able to stop that growling, right? So we determine if there's a threat or not, and tell him to knock it off, right? We personally use a rest command, so we teach him. We'll say rest. Once he's quiet, good. Reward. If he growls after that, no, correction, right?
Yeah.
If it's some shady guy, let him growl. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I would handle that scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Megan B asks, how do you teach a dog not to whine? How can you explain what you're asking? So there's different scenarios where your dog might be whining. If you got separation anxiety, your dog might be whining. If you're departing the area, if your dog is anxious in general, they don't know what to do, they don't know what to expect, they might be whining. You know what I'm talking about? Like that dog that's just sitting there, you're just hanging out, and they're just whining. That is an anxious behavior. So that means the root cause is anxiety, which means you want to address the anxiety. And I like how you ask, how can you explain what you're asking? That means you're trying to figure out how to explain to your dog what you want them to be. We want our dogs to be calm, confident, relaxed. So how do we do that? We take them through a training process. We do engagement, relationship building with them. We get that eye contact solidified, kind of what we talked about earlier. I believe you asked a question about, paying attention to the food. So first we're going to get that done where we have solid eye contact, all right, and sustained eye contact. Relationship building as well, where we teach our dog how to walk properly on the leash. We're comfortable walking with them on a loose leash. Those two things alone will already start to work on that anxious mentality in most cases. And then I'm going to be prioritizing teaching my dog a downstay. And what the downstay is the downstay is a calming position. It's a calming behavior. So if I teach my dog how to downstay, if I see them getting anxious, I can put them into that downstay and they know to start calming down. And then calmness starts to become the normal of behavior, and then the whining stops. Okay, so again, this is not a fast process. Let's say you have a 4-year-old dog and your dog's been whining up to this point, and now you're deciding to take action, which is good, right? But you've got 4 years of reinforcement history of your dog being anxious and whining. So you can't expect to resolve that in 4 days. You see what I'm saying? You got to take time. You got to work on it. You got to keep your priority of training first thing in your head at all times. You know what I'm saying? All right, moving on. Joyful Canine Services is asking, any tips for working with an 18-month breeder GSP? Heavily punished for sitting down with the e-collar. Only trained, recall, drop it. Genetically fearful. That's a tough one.
She's got a couple follow-ups to clarify.
The GSP is now adopted into a pet dog family. Functional obedience is necessary and off-leash reliability. Most instances, aside from other training protocols, I will correct the whining typically with continuous stim on remote collar, but should be building confidence simultaneously to reduce the root cause too. So Joyful Canine Services, if you're responding to the whining question, I will caution correcting the whining before you do what we talked about, before you develop the relationship, before you develop the downstay position, okay? Correcting the whining is a tactic that can be used way later in a training progression, all right? But your first priority is relationship, engagement, and getting that downstay solidified. Once we get that solidified, we can then progress from there and deal with anything going on from there, right? But it is a tactic that can be used later. Our preference is to focus on the relationship building and development of the behavior first before we do any type of correction. But going back to the 18-month-old GSP that's got a history of being corrected, stemmed, classic dog trainer, right? From all of these dog training franchises and things that shouldn't be doing the training they're doing. They put a remote collar on the dog day one. That's what they're using to train the dog. That's not right. If you're involved with that, if you know a trainer doing that, stay away from them. All right, so this dog unfortunately has this history, trained to recall, drop it, genetically fearful. Right now, Joyful Canine Services is thankfully helping this dog, okay? The dog's now adopted into a pet dog family. Functional obedience is necessary, off-leash reliability. What are the tips, Chris? What's your go-to?
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually going through this right now. We got 2 dogs that I'm training right now that were pressure trained. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
They had a knowledge of the obedience. Like they could sit, they could down. But you could tell that it's stressful, right? Working and doing the obedience is very stressful because of the way they were trained. And so with them, even though they had an understanding of obedience, I went to school. I treated them as if they knew nothing at all. And it was very clear that these dogs had never experienced a food lure or anything like that. You know what I'm saying? And so I treated them as if when I took them out of the kennel, I didn't hold them to anything. I treated them as if they were an untrained dog. And I started from square one, started showing them the expectations as if they didn't know the sit. I would lure them into the sit, mark that and reward that, and let them chase that piece of food. So I'm trying to change their perspective that working with us is going to be fun and enjoyable, and it's going to be a positive thing, right? Like there's not going to be accountability or anything like that at this stage, right? Now you do need to, at a certain point, you're going to have to circle back to accountability, and you need to be very, very careful. You may not do this just like with any dog, right? Mm-hmm. Because now they've already got this bad experience. You've built them up doing the food luring and things like this. Now all of a sudden we're going to start introducing a punishment and that kind of stuff. So again, now I'm taking the e-collar off of this dog. When I say going back to the basics,
100%.
taking the e-collar off, we're not using it. We're doing food luring. teaching the expectations. When I'm ready to go back into the e-collar, I'm going to condition it just like I would one of our training dogs. I'm going to put that e-collar back on, and what you'll probably see with this dog is some anxiety come back in. So like now I'm putting that e-collar on, I'm not touching the remote. Might not even turn it on, right? Like
Right.
put that e-collar on, let's go for a walk. Back to the food luring, all right? Remaking the association. Oh, okay, this e-collar's not so scary or anything like that. And I'm going to properly condition the e-collar starting at the lowest possible levels, right? And we've done podcasts on that stuff as well.
100%. Yeah.
And then I'm gonna just build it up from there. But yeah, that was the long answer. But the short answer is
Right.
just go back to the basics.
Yeah.
Treat it as if it's an untrained dog.
Exactly, yeah. Especially with this dog, we've trained many dogs like this. We've had to, I hate to say it, but fix training,
Right.
fix bad training, and especially with a genetically fearful dog, it's so critical just to go back to the beginning, go back to step one of training, regress all the way back, act like zero training has been done, and rebuild everything, because that genetic insecurity, if you don't properly handle it, if you don't properly address it, it will create problems for you later if you're trying to skip steps or manipulate steps in the training. Don't rush the process, especially with an insecure dog. You got to take it, easy with them, okay? All right, Jedediah Room asks, how can you teach your dog not to be jealous of your other dog? So you got to teach both dogs your expectations. All right, like we said earlier, I think you had a question about teaching them. You're going to teach them individually at first and then teach them together. So when you're training them individually, teaching them individually, you're teaching them both your expectations. Once you get them together, you're teaching them their expectations together are the same as them individually, but now you have to run through your scenario training, right? So if one dog has a chew toy and the other dog tries to go for that chew toy that the one dog has, that dog that's trying to break the boundary of the other dog has to be held accountable for that and shown what to do in that situation, which is usually just to give your other dog some space, okay? So you have to go through the scenario-based training for specific scenarios that you're dealing with your two dogs interfering with each other. And that first, again, teaching them individually all the way through their training progression, putting them together, running your scenario-based training so they understand how to perform and behave in those specific scenarios that you're talking about. All right, Melissa Bush says, for basic commands, is it good to train with hand signals along with voice commands? And are there universal hand signals to teach them? So what we do, because your dog's a nonverbal creature, your dog prefers your hand signals more than your verbal commands. So in our training, we'll teach hand signals first, and then we'll use those hand signals to help us condition our verbal commands, all right? And then at that point, you'll need to use both hand signal and verbal commands separately at different times so your dog maintains their association to both of those. If you stop the hand signals, your dog will start to lose the association to the hand signals. If you stop the verbal commands, your dog will start to lose the association to the verbal commands. So you're going to want to teach them both. We use the hand signals to our advantage because, again, your dog's a nonverbal being. And if you're ever in a very crowded environment, a loud environment, your hand signal is going to be more advantageous than your verbal command. But we really like dogs that respond really good to verbal commands because that is more difficult for them to pay attention to. Okay? With that being said, I don't think there's any universal hand signals, but what we do, we teach a couple, okay? So the heel, when our dog's walking with us with a loose leash on our left side, our hand signal is left palm forward, left leg forward. So you'll say your dog's name, dog, heel, left palm forward, left leg forward would be your silent hand signal. For the sit command, your left palm would be straight up, all right? So you would just, if you're saying sit, dog, sit, left palm straight up. If you're giving a down command, left palm straight down. If you're giving a stay command, left palm starts at your belly, shoots out to your left side just like that. Stay. Okay. Come command, left palm to your chest. Those are the main ones that we teach. We will also use our pointer to point specific directions out to our dog depending on what we're teaching them. Okay. But those are the basics of the hand signals. that we're teaching. All right, Jedediah's room says, back to the jealousy question, which Megan is also agreeing with her. How do you get 2 female dogs not to be jealous? But Jedediah says, if I cuddle with one, the other one bites her. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, that's probably the more common whenever people ask about jealousy and stuff. That's the more common. It's like, hey, when I'm petting this dog, the other one is doing whatever, like comes butts in or is biting her. Like that could be like a little bit of resource guarding, could be a couple of things going on there. But at the end of the day, it does still, like what you said, still applies. So you have to teach your dog expectations, hold them to those expectations, and then put them through scenarios. So like I'm going to go through that training progression, teach my dog a spot. My dogs might be in the spot or place command, and then I might walk up and I might reinforce one of those dogs and pet that dog, and the other dog has to tolerate that and kind of just deal with that, right? It's not being mean or anything like that. It just is what it is. I'm literally reinforcing this dog. This dog has to just be able to deal with that without getting up in her grill, right?
Well, let's say that other dog does get up.
Right.
What are you doing?
So now I'm holding that dog to those expectations, right? So in that specific scenario that I outlined, both dogs are on spot. If that dog gets up because I'm interacting with this dog because there's some jealousy or whatever going on, that dog is now deviated from an expectation that I'm holding it to, right? So like now I'm stopping that interaction with that dog. I'm going to grab the leash or use my remote collar or whatever tools I'm using for accountability, correct that dog back to its spot or its place command. Once it's back, we can say good, right? And I can go back to doing whatever to reinforce, to pet that other dog or whatever I'm doing. But at the end of the day, like those are the scenarios I'm putting them through, and I can balance that out. I'm not saying like I'm just, hey, that's the dog that has the problem, I'm never going to pet that dog. But I do need to teach that dog to tolerate the fact that I am going to pet this dog, right? Like we see this with kids too. Sometimes people bring babies into the home, right? And dogs can get what people will describe as jealous because, hey, now we're giving a lot of attention and affection to this little alien thing that we brought into the house, right? Now my dog's getting jealous, right? So like they got to learn to tolerate certain things, and you can't really do that unless you got those expectations in place. And if you don't, if you're still in these early phases, you were talking about training the dogs individually, right? If we don't have those expectations in place, then I can still do those scenarios, but just set it up to where we're in control. One dog's in the kennel, and I'm doing my training sessions. Like if you do it, like if you go back to when we first started talking about his situation. We're taking a dog out of the kennel. We're training with him. Other dog's in the kennel. I could do that in front of that dog. That dog's already now learning to tolerate some of that stuff. Like, hey, this stuff's going to be going on. You're going to have your turn. You're going to have your engagement with me and all that kind of stuff. But bottom line, we're not going to allow that behavior, the jealousy behavior.
Yeah, first you need to make sure your training progression is done with both dogs individually, which for us, Pack Talk Podcast, episode 96, that takes you through our whole training progression, everything we're doing. By the end of that, both dogs understand clear communication with a remote collar. So now if you're in the scenario-based training, you're petting one dog, your other one wants to attack, like Megan is saying that, her other dog is attacking the one that she's petting. Jedediah is saying that the other one's just biting her. So we got biting and attacking, right, going on. As soon as the other dog goes to attack the one that I'm petting, no correction, right? Making sure that dog that was attacking at that point is now going to be sent away, ideally to a place command or a spot command, like a pet cot, away from us to maintain that healthy separation. And what that does is it helps with your self-control, the dog's self-control. It helps with understanding what to do in different situations. All right. So I hope that answers y'all's question. Before we get some other questions, Joyful Canine Services is asking, since we're talking about jealousy, she's asking, is jealousy the same as resource guarding? I have heard dogs don't feel jealous. What is your take on that? So personally, resource guarding is a little bit different, right? Resource guarding is some form of dominance. Jealousy, if you want to get super scientific or technical, dogs don't really feel jealous. They're trying to manipulate environments. But, instead of going down this huge scientific rabbit hole, for most people, talking in just common terms, if we're talking about jealousy, we're handling it a specific way, which is the way we've already described, okay? Resource guarding is generally going to be based in or rooted in dominance or insecurity. And we did do an entire podcast episode on resource guarding. So definitely check that podcast episode out on Pack Talk Podcast. You can search for resource guarding. We talk all details resource guarding, how to resolve it. Okay. Raya and Josie's Doggo or Dogo Life. We see you guys' comment. Go ahead, type in your question. We have 2 more questions to get through, then we can get to yours real quick. So if you guys type it out, we'll have it in our queue. Next up is Kwame. He's saying there's not a lot of kennels in Ecuador. Of course, Asher's very protective of the house. What's the recommendation of trying or wanting to introduce a house or a dog sitter if we leave for a few days? And this applies to people all over the country, all over the world. How do you introduce a house or a dog sitter, that's coming to your house to watch your dog?
Yeah. I mean, ideally, we can find somebody that's consistent, like a consistent person. Hey, maybe next door neighbor's got a, 16-year-old or something that's looking for some extra work. We can, throw some cash their way to watch our dog. But essentially, we want to kind of do some of the same stuff that we've been talking about with a lot of these dogs, is building a relationship. So if we can, that's a perfect scenario. Is if we can find somebody that's willing to do some work with us to build a relationship with our dog, you're going to be set up for better success. And what that would look like is, maybe once a week or whatever you got time for, they come over, we go on a walk. Like, doesn't even have to start in the home. You meet them in a neutral place, you go on a walk together, right? You show them, hey, look, here's how you, in your particular case with Asher, because he's trained and has expectations, here's how you hold him to these expectations. Here's what he knows. Here's how you take him on a walk. Here's how you correct him. Here's how you reward him. You're kind of giving them, the deal of how to handle him. And then you have them handle him, right? And kind of get him used to them. You can get them doing engagement and all that kind of stuff so that he's viewing them as a positive thing. And then you start to implement this in the home. You have them come over and you can do these same drills and things like that, so that he's going to be more comfortable with that person, right? So ideally that'd be the best, is I'm going to try to find somebody that can consistently come and help me out.
Right. And do the same things you're doing, Kwame.
Right.
All right. We did skip a question. Sorry about that, Jedediah. Asking, should I spay my female dog? I have a neutered male dog, so I thought it wouldn't be a problem, but it cut off a little bit. So should we spay our female dog or not? My personal preference of spaying and neutering is waiting until they're 3 years old, because I want all of the hormonal changes to take effect. If you spay or neuter too soon, like before 3 years old, you could have some growth issues with the dog, because those parts that are getting spayed or neutered are providing a lot of hormonal influence to the dog's development. So I want full development from the dog. I want joint health from the dog and the growth and all that. So I'll make sure that, those are developed. By the time they're about 3 years old, they should be good to go. So then you'd be safe to spay or neuter after that. Just know that in 40% of cases, or 60% of the time, if you spay or neuter, it's not going to affect your behavior. So if you're having a behavioral problem and you think that spaying or neutering your dog is going to fix the behavioral problem, it's not going to change anything in 60% of cases, which is a majority of cases. And I see that Megan says, oops, got yours spayed at 1 year old. It's okay. A lot of people are pushing this on your a lot of people out there will push you to spay or neuter, and most people are concerned about accidental litters. So you got to be a responsible dog owner and make sure that doesn't happen. But from here on out, you have that information. Dogs that you're getting from this point, you can then take action as needed. All right. So backing it up. Okay. Well, Jedediah says my neutered male dog and her behavior is kind of weird now. The dog that the male is neutered, the female is not spayed. Okay. So again, whether they're neutered or spayed, and they're kind of aggressive with each other. So honestly, you need to go. Raya and Josie, we're going to get to your question here in a second. Okay. But Jedediah, your 2 dogs, you need to take them through a full training progression. This is going to resolve everything you're going through. Go to Pack Talk Podcast, episode 96, the Ultimate Dog Training Guide. Follow that. Okay. All right, going back to the next question, Evil Lynn. I'm a truck driver. Ben, the thing's kind of cutting off here.
Said, I'm a truck driver. How do I teach my dog to make some type of noise to let me know they need to potty?
Truck driver. How do I teach my dog to make some kind of noise to let me know they go potty? All right. So let me move this real quick. What would you recommend if trying or wanting to introduce Evelyn, I'm a truck driver. How do I teach my dogs to make some kind of noise to let me know they need to go potty? Also, the added excitement of when feeding or outside time. How do I help them be more calm? So we got a two-part question here. How do we teach my dog to let us know to make some kind of noise they got to go potty? Chris, what we got?
I mean, I think most dogs are going to do this naturally. Like most dogs aren't just going to like, especially in this situation, we got a dog laying in the, probably sitting in the seat next to you or whatever when you're driving. Most dogs aren't just going to go to the bathroom. Like, yes, there are some cases, but for the most part, most dogs are going to do something like whining or maybe some type of barking or something that's going to indicate like they got to go to the bathroom. They might get up and start moving around in circles. So like we want to do paying attention to those types of things. Now, some of those things are also consistent with anxious behavior, right? So we do want to, like, there's other things that can go on, like our dogs can manipulate us because they want to go outside or whatever, right? So there's a lot of things that can go into this. I'm going to look more towards, instead of teaching them some type of thing to do to me, I'm going to focus on resource management. So I'm going to manage when they get water, right? I need to make sure they're getting enough water to be hydrated, right? But if I know I'm going to be on, let's say I'm driving, I don't know the truck driver world, so forgive me, but let's say I'm at a 6-hour stretch of driving, right? I want to minimize my dog's water intake for that 6-hour stretch, and maybe I'm taking an 8-hour break. Then that's when I'm loading them up with the water, and I'm going to give them frequent potty breaks as I can. But again, I know you're not going to be able to stop every hour or whatever as you're driving your truck, right? And so I don't want, so to speak, I don't want the gas tank full while I'm doing the longest stretch. You know what I'm saying? And then I will. You do, like, if they do give you those indicators of like, hey, I got to go to the bathroom, we need to respect that and try to get them a little potty break if we can.
Yeah, you teach them the same. If you're going to teach them how to give you a certain signal, you have to classically condition that to the behavior of going potty. So it's the same thing for someone that wants their dog to ring the bell at the door to let them know to go out to go potty. So I would probably set up some kind of bell or something that you want your dog to do. If you're taking a potty break, you ring that bell, and then you will take them outside to go potty. Repetitions of that will teach your dog to ring the bell to go outside. You have to be careful, because once your dog understands that bell gets them outside, they will probably start ringing that bell just to go outside and goof off or sniff around, which is going to delay your travels. Okay, so be very careful with actually teaching them that. What Chris is saying about managing their intake and getting them on a schedule, that would be best in most cases, because then your dog can rely upon them to make a noise or ring a bell or something. It can just be not advantageous in some situations. Your second part of your question, also the added excitement when feeding or outside time. How do I help them be more calm? So, you just gave another comment. Evelyn, my 2 oldest just looked at me. My youngest puppy doesn't. I did buy the talk buttons, though. Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay, so your oldest one's just looked at you. Your youngest one doesn't. Okay, so you might have to, you can teach them to look at you before you take them outside to go potty. It's the same thing. You tell them to look at you, which you have to teach them that. Then you do that. Look, they look at you. Okay, go potty, right? So you can teach them that if you want to. The excitement when feeding or going outside, you have to teach your dog to be calm before they access the food or access the outside. The easiest way to do that is to teach them to do a down stay. So you put your dog in a down, put them in a stay. Once they can hold that calmly, then you can be like, okay, eat, okay, outside, however you're going to do that. But the food is the reward. Going outside is the reward. So you have to make sure that the calmness is what they do in order to access the reward that they want. And that's just going to take time on your part to train that specific behavior you want. Generally is going to be a sit stay or a down stay. That's your ideal behaviors for teaching calmness before they can access something that they're getting super excited about. So play around with that. Let us know. Give us some feedback here, and I'll take a couple days at least to get that going, okay?
Question from Instagram if you want it on screen.
What's the question from Instagram?
It's on screen.
I don't see it.
How to safely keep separation from an off-leash dog that runs up on your reactive dog during our walks. Other owners don't recall their dog or listen.
All right, we're going to answer this Instagram question, and then we're going to go to Raya and Josie's question about the anxiety barking, and then we're going to wrap this up here. Real quick, before we jump to this question, Evelyn just said, what's a good time span but not excessive? So, honestly, if your dogs are super motivated for food and going outside, it shouldn't take you that long. I'm thinking 3 to 4 days is a good time span to get that sit, stay down, stay solidified, at least for the specific scenario of getting the food and getting outside. If you want it in a variety of scenarios, it's going to take more time. Go to Pack Talk Podcast, episode 96. I know you're a truck driver, so I'm assuming that you're driving a lot. Listen to the podcast. You can watch the video version as well to get the PowerPoint notes on there. That will steer you in the right direction.
Not while you're driving the truck.
Right, not while you're driving, but it will steer you in the right direction. Oh, I see what you're saying. Is 3 to 5 minutes of them being calm okay?
To access the food.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. You don't even have to do that. Maybe 1 minute. Maybe 1 minute. I just want to see my dog calm. As soon as they can show me that they can be calm. Because, some dogs will lay down and they're itching to get up. You know what I'm saying? You got to be calm. You have to show me that you're relaxed and calm into that position before you access that food or going outside.
Especially the going outside. You shouldn't have to be expected every time to sit there for 5 minutes before we're going outside. Right. So that could be a matter of seconds. They're just showing me some type of impulse control before we're stepping out. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah, self-control there. Yeah, you're welcome. All right, so going to the Instagram question, then to Ryan Josie's question, then we're wrapping this up. Instagram question, how to safely keep separation from an off-leash dog that keeps running up on your reactive dog during our walks. Other owners don't recall their dog or listen. Super annoying. Yeah. Super disrespectful.
Yeah, we get this one a lot. Yeah. It's hard. This is tough. This is not a...
Well, Chris's history, if you don't know. Chris is, unfortunately, his dog passed away recently, but the reason why he got into dog training is because he had a hyper-aggressive dog that would attack other dogs. Yeah. Right? And so he had to train that dog not to do that. And he was living in a neighborhood. He'd have little dogs break out of backyards, run up to him, and he has to manage that. So he's the guy that's been through this scenario before 100% in his personal life.
Yeah, and it's stressful. And the thing that I found, there's no perfect black and white answer to this, right? But at the end of the day, what I will say is do what you have to do to not allow that dog to get to your dog, especially if your dog is reactive and you're working through that. When your dog self-reinforces on that behavior that they do is what's going to repeat, right? And so you got to do what you got to do to not allow that dog to get into your dog's space, right? And it might not be as serious as my case. Sometimes maybe a dog's trying to play, your dog's friendly, it's not that big of a deal, but it can still affect your training and things like that, and affect your dog's level of respect for you. So a couple of different options that come to mind. They have ultrasonic devices you can get on Amazon. You know what I'm saying? A lot of dogs don't like it. You can't hear it, right? But you point it at the dog. You're walking. You got your dog in heel position. That off-leash dog's coming. You point it at the dog, push this button, and it repels the dog, right? I've used them successfully. I've also used them unsuccessfully. I've had dogs that just blow right past that. It doesn't affect them whatsoever. So it's not going to be 100%. But it is a little device. It's very easy to clip to a belt or something like that. So that's one option. You know what I'm saying? Other options can be your body language to the dog, right? So if I have my dog in heel position, and again, all these options that I'm talking about is from the stance of my dog has some expectations, right? So I'm not putting myself and my dog in this situation as much as possible until I have those expectations. So just prefacing it with that. But dog's coming at me, I might give it very dominant body language. I'm going to face that dog, right? I might even yell at that dog, hey, get out of here, go, right? And I'm trying to repel that dog to even coming up to us, and just to make it kind of think twice, maybe turn around, hopefully walk away, right? Again, I've done that very successfully. I've done that unsuccessfully, where some dogs they just don't get that, right? And they're going to keep coming at you. My final line of defense, you know what I'm saying, is you do what you have to do. Of course, I don't ever want to injure other dogs or hurt other dogs, but I am going to do what I have to do to keep that dog from getting up into my dog space. At the end of the day, if I allow, with my particular case with Vader, if I allowed that dog to get into our space, that dog is likely going to suffer severe injury and possibly death if Vader were to do what he did. You know what I'm saying? And so, yes, I'll kick a dog. I'll use the end of my leash. I might take all the slack out of the leash. I have my dog in heel. I'll use the remaining slack of that leash to kind of whip at the dog. I'll have a heel position, put my leash in the left grip, and I turn so that I'm between my dog and that dog coming on, and I'm going to kick that dog. I'm going to hopefully kick that dog to where they're going to think again and go away. Again, I don't want to hurt a dog. I don't want that, but that is the better option than affecting my training goals, but also letting some damage being done.
Yeah, and if your dog damages another dog, even if that dog ran up at you, you could have somebody trying to give you a hard time, or trying to take you into legal action.
Mm-hmm.
Quick story for me, we're currently in South Carolina. I was dog training in Southern California for quite a while. And there was this one Great Dane that I was training. He was in training because he had literally split open a boxer. Like, he was out in the front yard, a boxer came into the front yard, split open the boxer. Obviously the boxer's dead. So, this dog's in training. I was at the point of its training where I was doing distraction socialization work. I trusted this Great Dane because we had done the relationship, the engagement building, all of that type of stuff. I was walking through a park, and there was a dude who had his golden retriever off leash. It was not an off leash area, so he wasn't supposed to be off leash. Golden retriever was off leash, comes running at me. It's a super nice dog. I can tell by looking at it walking up to me. But I got this Great Dane next to me, very powerful dog. We've done rehabilitation up to this point. I don't want him to get into a situation where he feels like he has to react at something, right? So I'm thinking about the safety of this golden retriever, and the guy over here thinks it's okay for his dog to come up to me because his dog's friendly. He's never in his life had a reactive dog. He's never had a dog that you literally have to train and pay attention to, right? And so he doesn't really understand reactive or aggressive dogs. So his little golden's coming up. I'm like, no, I'm telling it to go away. It's not listening. So I do what Chris said. I grabbed short on my leash in my left hand. I took the end of my leash, and as the golden came up, I gave it a little tap on its nose, just enough to make it turn around and run away. And, I don't want to hurt a dog, like you said, but I got to make sure that my dog is good to go. Just hit the side button on that. And so, is it still on? Okay. So anyway, I tap the golden retriever on the nose. It turns around, runs back to the owner. The owner is very angry. Did you just hit my dog? And I said, dude, this Great Dane.
Saved your dog's life.
Right. I was like, dude, I'm protecting your dog, right? Your dog doesn't understand boundaries. This dog right here that's with me is in training for aggression. It's in rehabilitation from dog aggression. Your golden cannot be walking up into this dog's bubble. And this dude was so angry, you know what I'm saying? And he stormed off and all that, but that's just what I had to do in that situation, and I'll stand my ground to make sure the dog I'm with is good to go.
Well, one more thing, too, on that is never lose sight of the fundamentals. The fundamentals are so important, and I think as you're talking about that story, like I'm thinking of many scenarios where I got my dog to a point where I really trusted him and our relationship was super strong, but I still didn't want those dogs to get up in his bubble. But I trusted those fundamentals. That downstay was so good. Sometimes I would just say, Vader, down, Vader, stay. I would leave him there and walk to that dog.
Right.
Grab that dog, take it back to the owner. Here you go. Go back to my dog. Let's go. So, like, that was an option, too. But, again, you got to trust that. Got to trust that downstay. It's got to be solid.
Oh, yeah, got to be solid. Good for scenario-based training for sure. All right, jumping over to Raya and Josie's question, and then we're wrapping this up, okay? Let me see where it's at here. All right. There it is. How do I help my dog that barks so much? We got it. How do I help my dog that barks so much out of anxiety? The barking is really constant and overwhelming. Please help. Chris, can you start us off on this one?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. There can be a lot to unpack here. So, like, again, you're saying the root cause here of this barking is anxiety, right? And so what does that look like? Are there triggers, or is it just overall my dog's so anxious that they're barking? I have a hound dog that is that anxious, that just is anxious. You know what I'm saying?
Well, the first thing that pops in my head, too, self-control.
Right.
Dog is anxious. Dog doesn't know what to do.
Right. Bingo. Yep, exactly. So you got to, and it's not always, like sometimes, like, yes, there's one side of it, physical exercise, right? Like physical exercise is super important. But with my hound dog, I mean, I literally, and this was like rookie stuff that I did early on. I was like, hey, you know what? I'm just going to put her on the treadmill. I could literally put her on the treadmill for like 2 hours straight. She'd be tired, but then, like, within 30 minutes, recovered and back to anxious whining and stuff. And then I saw it getting worse, right? Because what's happening? I'm building up her stamina.
She's saying usually the trigger is people.
Right. Okay. So, like, if in general things are good, but then the anxiety is triggered by something, that's probably where I'm going to be putting my focus. But I am doing all of these other things, getting some type of training system in place, because this is what allows us to really attack the anxiety, right? So, like, let's say...
Especially men.
Okay, let's say men ringing my doorbell, UPS, Amazon, something like that. It triggers some type of barking incident, right? So again, it's going to be much easier if my dog has a clear expectation as to what to do. So they're on spot or a place command, holding the downstay, a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about with all these other things. Now I'm teaching my dog some self-control. Then you can go into teaching like a rest command like we talked about, or how to be quiet, and you can correct the barking. You can do that, right? But you don't want the self-reinforcing, because what's happening in the mailman situation is what? Our dog's anxious, or it's more so insecure about men coming over. Your dog barks, go charges the door. What does the mailman do? He leaves. He drops the package. He walks away. In your dog's mind, it's just reinforced. Your dog is insecure and feels that this display of aggression or this barking dictates that thing going away. I'm uncomfortable. I don't like this thing. I bark, it goes away. That's just what they do to survive. We want to give them a different thing to survive, right? Hey, hold this spot. This person's going to come by. Might drop a package. They might come in. I might have people coming in and they might hang out. Your job is to just hold this spot, right? Now we can give them positive associations to the men or whatever the trigger is, right? So somebody might come over. You have a conversation. Once they are under control, they stop barking. They relax, right? Then that person leaves. Now they have a positive experience. They have something else to do other than the anxious behavior, if that
Right.
makes sense.
I'm thinking impulse control,
Yeah.
self-control. We have to instill these with the dog. Socialization, because if my dog's anxious or insecure, which now that you say your trigger is men, or the dog's trigger is men, I'm like, okay, there's an insecurity there. There's a nervousness there, which means I need to do some socialization or some re-socialization, especially around men. But before I even get there, first I need to go through all my fundamental work, getting my engagement, getting my relationship building, getting my obedience done, getting my accountability in, because all these help me to show the dog what to do in different situations. Also, it helps me with the self-control, impulse control. You see what I'm saying? Because I can take my downstay that I've been practicing in low distraction environments and then take my dog into moderate and heavy distraction environments and make sure they understand, hey, you don't need to bark at these people. You don't need to be insecure about these people. You just hang out, do what I'm asking you to do, what we've been doing, and you'll be okay. I won't let people come up to you and disturb you, right? That's another thing. If your dog's insecure or anxious with people, you put him in a downstay or you're out in a public place, you know, how many people are going to ask you, can I pet your dog? You know, you're going to have to say no. You know, you're going to have to say no until your dog's comfortable with that interaction. And so, you know, getting through your fundamentals of training, start from the beginning, exactly. Go through your fundamentals of training, get to the point where you're ready to do your socialization work again, and then do your socialization work. You should be good to go at that point, because you'll have the impulse control done, self-control done, you'll have your accountability, you'll have your fundamentals of being able to reward your dog. Your dog's going to know to pay attention to you, want to check in with you as you go different places. So that's what I would be doing. Again, the Ultimate Dog Training Guide on YouTube, Pack Talk Podcast, episode 96. Those are your go-tos. Those are your go-tos to know the details of that process and what you would be doing. And again, it's not going to be done in 3 days. It's not going to be done in 7 days. You know, it's going to take some time. But the most important thing is to take your time and make sure that your dog is comfortable with each step before you keep proceeding. Don't push your dog into a situation that it's uncomfortable with and start hammering it with corrections or pressure or aversion. That's not going to help you. That's not going to help your dog. Enjoy the training process. Learn to enjoy it. You know, it's going to be fun for you. It's going to be fun for your dog. It's going to pay off for your dog in the long term, right? Thank you guys for your feedback. I know you guys said it's very helpful, you know, that we're freaking awesome. Thank you guys for that. We appreciate that.
You're freaking awesome.
Absolutely. You guys are awesome. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for, you know, tuning in and giving us some questions. Instagram, YouTube, everybody else watching. Just a couple notes before we head out here. Pack Talk Podcast. It's on every podcast platform, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you want to listen to it. We do that so you guys can listen while you drive, listen while you work out, listen while you do other things. We think that's a good way to be learning information. Also, the YouTube channel, we got the videos on there. Obviously, you guys are aware of that. Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, same thing there. We got the videos on there. Trying to get better at doing the stories so you guys can see us daily. And, we do have a Pack Talk podcast YouTube channel as well, where we put all the video feeds from the podcast. So if you like watching a podcast, you can do that. We put some on the YouTube channel as well. A couple of notes I just want to make, especially when we're talking about the health of our dog. Okay, we talked today about a little bit of some genetic insecurity. We talked today about some spaying or neutering happening a little bit earlier than desirable, right? We want long-term health for our dog. We are affiliates with people that we believe in. Canine Super Supplements. You can click the link in the bio, but Canine Super Supplements has a joint support supplement that I think would be very beneficial. So check that out. You can use the promo code Canine Revolution. You can get 15% off of Canine Super Supplements. Add it to your dog's food. Also, We Feed Raw. We're affiliated with them as well. That's raw food for your dog. You could feed your dog a completely raw diet. You could mix it like I do. I do like 50% kibble, 50% raw, and add in the Canine Super Supplements. Canine Revolution is going to be your discount code there as well. And then for your personal health, you guys, we got the Jocko Fuel. All right, so these are the Jocko Fuel clean energy drinks. They have protein. They have every supplement that you could get. Check it out, jockofuel.com. Canine Revolution is your discount code for 10% off, okay? Reading through the last comments here. I got a frog in my throat now. I've been talking so long. Thank you guys for your feedback. Yes, we are located in South Carolina. If you want to work with us, we work with people in our local area in person. We also do virtual lessons. So if you're not local to our area, we can set up a virtual lesson with you where you'll be one-on-one with one of our trainers, me, Chris, Kevin, or Aaron. You can set up that virtual session. We'll give you specific one-on-one feedback designed for you and your dog. We'll also provide you with a handout that's going to give you specific videos to pay attention to help visualize some of that stuff, okay? Evelyn, if you're in Sumter, we can work with you one-on-one. You could come to us. We can come to you, okay? Megan, the virtual lessons, those are $250 a lesson. All right, so check that out. If you're doing private lessons with us, that depends on your location. If you're doing a board and train with us, people send their dogs from all over the country to us. That depends on the program that you select. So if you're interested, in contacting us, text us or call us at our number, 843-213-2676. That's our cell phone. Or email us, info@caninerevolutiondogtraining.com. That's the best way to get in contact with us. Give us, 24 to 48 hours to get back in touch with you. And we look forward to working with you guys that need some work. We also look forward to continuing to provide as much education and free information as possible via all of our social media channels on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, podcast, etc. Again, the number 843-213-2676. Shoot us a text, give us a call, whatever's easier for you. We look forward to speaking with you guys, okay? Any last minute comments? Drop them right now. Any last minute comments? Make sure you like the video. Make sure you subscribe to our channel. Really appreciate it. Spread the word. Send it out to all your friends. All right? This is Chad and Chris with Canine Revolution Dog Training. We'll see you guys next time. Out.